For reasons I've never quite been able to understand, we treat suffering as if it's the Olympics. We treat it as if we are going for the gold in sacrifice. And we do it daily, too. We don't allow people to mention that they have a headache without mentioning that we stubbed our toe. We don't allow people to say that they're not hungry without telling them that there are starving kids in China. We always have to try to play this game of comparison with one another in terms of who has it hardest, who's climbing the biggest mountain, who has the odds most stacked against them. The place that I'm most amazed to see this in is amongst parents. It blows my mind that we are already dealing with quite a bit of scrutiny from people who don't even quite understand what it is that we do every day. And yet, we can't seem to stop arguing amongst one another in regards to who has it harder, who's dealing with the most, who gets to say that they are the most tired at get-togethers and parties. It's especially bad amongst mothers. At least, that's what I've noticed, but it could also be just because I myself am a mother. What I mainly get to hear is an argument amongst camps. Who has it the worst? Stay-at-home moms? Work-at-home moms? Working moms? Who has the worst pile of shit to dig through barehanded in order to be a good parent? Who has the right to complain? Well, I'm setting out once and for all to try to settle this argument. I'm Ariana Bradford, and this is the NIAM Project Podcast. Hey everyone, as I've mentioned, I am Ariana Bradford, and this is the NIAM Project Podcast, and you're listening to episode 11, Stay-at-home moms versus working moms versus work-from-home moms, the title bout. This is a solo episode today, so if you were hoping for an expert or some other voice, you might just want to go ahead and turn this off and wait for episode 12. The rest of you who are here to listen to me ramble for a bit, thank you for coming back, and let's get this started. So, it's amazing to me that we are in the year of 2019, and we still have an argument going amongst parents in terms of who has it worse. Nobody wants to be proud of any convenience or happiness that they might have in their lives because it all is about the suffering. It's all about sacrifice. Parenting is about sacrifice, they say. The best parents are the ones who give and give and give and give and don't expect anything in return. And to a point, I get where this is coming from. There is a lot of sacrifice that goes into being a parent. Kids just constantly need things from you that you can't expect to be given back. Patience, for example. You have to be extremely patient with kids, even when they have zero patience for you. And that can be a very hard, very draining, very exhausting give and take. One that a lot of us would like some sort of recognition for. On the other hand, though, we seem to lose sight of the fact that parenting is not about sacrifice. It includes sacrifice, but it is not about it. Anyway, I could go more into that, but instead what I want to go into is the meat of this argument. And in a way, talking about sacrifice leads us right into it. The argument is always, who has it harder? Who has to give up more? So let's go ahead and start with stay-at-home moms. The Pew Research Group reported that according to the U.S. Census Bureau data from 2016, 18% of U.S. parents, that's 11 million people, were staying home with their children. So that may not sound like a very high number, but when you think about the fact that 11 million people were choosing to stay home with their children, be it because of financial reasons or because of emotional reasons or because of even religious reasons. 11 million people? That's a lot. And I actually was a simple stay-at-home mom for quite a while myself. So I got a chance to hear a lot of what people think of those of us who stay home with our kids. There was a lot of assuming that we sat around playing games and hanging out with our kids all day. There were a lot of comments about how I don't work, which technically is true. Just an aside, I actually don't like that we call staying at home with our kids a job. I also do this, but I don't think that we should, because it is technically not a job. It's work, but it's not a job. We don't get paid. We don't have benefits. We don't get paid time off. The whole thing is a lot of work with none of the accoutrements that come with having a job. So I do sometimes still slip up and use that term, but I think that we should be actually calling it work. That being said, it's still not very enjoyable being at a party or a get-together and hearing someone say, "Oh, so you don't work." And of course, you want to look at them and say, well, of course I work. I have to have my hand up someone's butt about 2 or 3 times a day. I'm constantly having conversations with someone who can be mad at me one minute and love me to death the next. I don't get a lot of time to myself. I don't get a lot of time with other adults. And most of my achievements are measured by how well my children are doing and how clean my house is. But you don't say those things. Not in that moment. You generally tend to sit and you say, you're right, I don't have a job. And so that's where a lot of the assumptions come from. A lot of what we get to hear as stay-at-home parents is about how we don't work, how we have it very easy because somebody else is paying our bills, how we can stay home when our kids are sick. We get to hear about the lacks of commute, the lacks of bots. We get to hear all kinds of things about how staying home with children is just peach pie and pony farts, and we should be proud. And here's the thing. We actually should be proud of the things that go well for us, staying home with kids. We shouldn't be taking these things as insults, as ways of being told that we do not work hard. You can work hard and still have benefits in any job in the world. And even though this is not a paying job, it is still something that comes with its own perks. And it's okay to acknowledge those. It's okay to say, you know what? I get to cuddle with my kids in the morning and I love it. Or I absolutely love that I'm lucky enough to be able to take my kids to the park in the middle of the day. There is nothing wrong with admitting these things and still acknowledging that you do a lot every day. Surprise, surprise, we are 3D subjects. We are human beings with layers. And so it's 100% possible to feel 2 things about one issue. So anyway, people say these things and they assume that because we are staying home, which is where a lot of people wish they were when they're at work or anywhere else, that we must be happy to be here and that we must stay home all day. In fact, probably one of my least favorite comments once made was, I wish I could just stay home all day with my kids. And I don't think that the person quite understood that staying home all day with your children can be isolating. It can be exhausting. It can make you feel either trapped or, on the opposite side, it can make you feel kind of agoraphobic when you leave the house. There's also this fact that some people don't realize you stay home all day because the concept of having to go shopping with children really just kind of makes you shrivel on the inside. You don't want to do that, so you stay home. So anyway, let's go ahead and just check a couple things in the boxes here for stay-at-home parents. We have the positives. The positives being that we get to be home with our children when they need us, that we get to be there for our family when we absolutely need to be, that we do get to share in some moments that other people may not get to. On the negative side of things, we often feel isolated. We're often not held in very high esteem, even if people want to try to argue the other side of that sometimes. And it's very, very easy for us to feel like we are not valued. And then there is also the fact that when you are a stay-at-home parent, mother or father, you often tend to start realizing that what you don't give up in time, that is, in commute time or working in a cubicle or traveling for business, you lose in autonomy. You suddenly start finding that your schedule depends on whether or not your children have practices, doctor's appointments, whether or not the working spouse has places to be, has happy hours to hit, has meetings that they have to get to. Suddenly, your doctor's appointments sometimes come with an audience because somebody has to watch the children, and maybe you don't financially feel comfortable paying for a babysitter to go to a doctor's appointment. And a lot of doctor's offices are open for limited hours on Saturdays, if any at all. And that's assuming that you're half of a partnership where the other partner works a regular 9 to 5 that doesn't have ridiculous hours. So then you start to feel like your time is really only at the mercy of other people's. Your schedules, your time out for yourself, your time out with friends, it suddenly all is easily dispensable to other people. And if you're not careful, it winds up becoming so easy for all of your time to go to someone else. And it is so easy because you don't have a punch clock. You don't have coworkers asking you out at the end of the day. You don't have anything to mark when your wall has been hit. And so that's all very hard. And it's all a struggle. And it's all something that a lot of people seem to miss because that word home is right there in your title. And that's where everybody wishes they were most of the day. I mean, I know I wish I was home a lot, and I am home a lot. So anyway, that is what we have for stay-at-home moms. So now let's focus on working moms. I have also been a working mom outside the home. Not working from home, I had to get in a car, I had to drive an hour each way every day to another city. I had to sit in traffic, I had to worry about checking in on time, I had to answer to a manager, I had coworkers, I had to go to lunch in a break room. You get the picture. And there are definite positives to being a working parent, especially if you love your job. If you love your job, getting to leave the house and focus on something that means something to you for a few hours every day can be so powerful. It can help you hold on to who you are in a way that nothing else can. It gives you a chance to focus not just on the growth of your own children, but on the growth of yourself. It gives you a chance to have a change in scenery every day. It gives you a chance to interact with people who can actually speak in full sentences every day. It gives you a chance to focus on dressing yourself with a purpose. It has so many positives to it from a personal growth perspective that I can completely see why some of the people I know say that they would never want to stay home with their children, that they would prefer to continue to work. People who don't feel this way, though, people who really don't like working outside of the home, will maintain that working outside of the home is the hardest thing because you don't get to see your children and you missed out on important milestones quite often. You could be working a job that you don't enjoy. And in its own way, working outside of the home can be isolating if the commute's too long. because you don't often stay for work functions so that you can get home on time to see your family. And while we're on this subject, we also all are quite aware that society is not really set up for working families. It's not set up for families in general, if we're going to be honest, because we all know that work-life balance is a 4-letter word, which is ridiculous because when you're young, you're constantly asked when you're going to have children. When are you going to start a family? They'll ask. It's pretty much expected. But then the moment that you have them, you're supposed to work purely to keep them alive. Wanting to spend time with them, wanting to put them before work, wanting to keep your family as your number one priority is suddenly frowned upon. You are expected to work as if work is your only priority, and you are supposed to somehow raise children as if your children are your only priority. And while you're dealing with that, you're also dealing with people who automatically assume that you must want to be home with your kids. Even if you are one of those people I mentioned from before who absolutely adores your job, you are supposed to want to be there for your children more than you want to be at work. You can't like each equally. You can't like each separately. You have to compare the two. One of my favorite things that I was asked when I was working was how I felt, quote, letting someone else raise my children, end quote. And it's a very popular thing. I've heard it since I've stopped working the 9 to 5, and it still blows my mind. These people aren't waking up with my child at 2 a.m. They're not wiping my kid's ass during a horrible, horrible bout of diarrhea. They're not sitting there teaching them how to be a human being on weekends when they decide that they're going to shove another child out of the way so that they can try to get on the swings first. They're not the ones who have to kiss constant boo-boos. They're not the ones that have to hug them when they have a nightmare. They're not the ones that have to teach them about family traditions and culture. All of that is done by the parents, and that is not something that we put in the hands of another human being to do. And so telling someone that someone else is raising their child because they are spending time with them during the day is insulting. And if you're hearing me right now, and if this is something that you have said, I am not coming after you. I am trying to ask you to think about how that sounds. Think about how you would feel if someone accused you of letting someone else do your job, when the fact is you are in a situation where you have no other choice, or where you do have the choice, but you've made a choice that helps both you and your children. So anyway, you work. On the positive side, you're helping your family financially. You may be growing personally. You are allowing your child to become socialized in daycare, or they are getting to spend time with a family member who they otherwise would not see. On the negative side, you're often tired. You don't get to spend as much time with your children as you might like to. And on top of that, you have a real boss. Not a toddler boss, but a real boss. So maybe you have that and a toddler boss. So you're kind of getting it on both sides. And now we get to the work from home mom. And this is where I am in my life now. It is the ideal, I think, place for a lot of people. A lot of people feel that working from home is where we all should be. Mainly, I think, because, again, the word home is right there in the title. Who doesn't want to sit at home all day without having to change their pants, just working for a few hours, and then getting to spend time with their kids? And it sounds like the best of both worlds, right? You get paid, you get to spend time with your kids, you don't have to leave the house if you don't want to, there's no commute. It sounds amazing. And I can only tell you from an entrepreneur's side of things, but all of this is still not as easy as many would think. I'm usually working 24 hours a day. If I'm not flat out working, I'm setting up work for the following day. I get to spend time with my children, yes, but there are some days where I have to work on somebody else's schedule, and therefore I have to miss bedtimes, or I have to rush bedtimes. There are days where I have so much to get done that my daughter just gets parked in front of electronics and TV all day. We don't talk, we don't cuddle, I'm just busy. And a lot of us being parents who work from home, have talked often about how it actually isn't very helpful to have our children home when we're trying to work. I mean, most of us out there know what it's like to have a small child vying for your attention when you're trying to do something else that calls for the utmost attention to detail. And it's just impossible. So sure, you can try to get things done, but if you have a small person who needs you every 5 seconds, of course, you're going to be focusing on them rather than you are your own work. And you don't have coworkers to help you. You don't have a boss to make sure that your work gets sent to someone who can do it. It just doesn't get done. When you're sick, it just doesn't get done. When you're tired, it just doesn't get done. And it's still isolating, but it's isolating more because a lot of us are introverts, homebodies. We don't tend to like to go anywhere. So what we tend to do is forget that we haven't been anywhere in weeks until someone actually asks us to go somewhere. And then sometimes we still don't even want to go because we've been spending all of our energy working and watching kids all day long. So we have our positives, that we get to work on our own time, that we do get to see our children more often, and that we do get to focus on some of our own needs. I have been able to give myself time off when I've been not feeling well or when my family has wanted to go on a vacation. And that is something that I cannot ignore. But then we have our negatives. Sometimes we don't get paid for a very long time. When my work doesn't get done, it doesn't get done in triplicate. It doesn't get done for my daughter and my son. It doesn't get done for my house, and it doesn't get done for my business. And it can be extremely isolating because we don't see people every day and we don't have anything that pushes us to do so. So, Ariana, you might be saying, what is your point? Who won this bout? Who has it the hardest? And my answer is none of us, dude. None of us have it harder than each other. We all have positives and we all have negatives, and we all need to cut this shit out. We really need to quit wanting to have it harder than one another as if it validates our parenting somehow more than someone else's parenting. It doesn't make you any stronger, any better, any more capable of a parent because you deal with, suffer through, sacrifice more than someone else. And it's relative anyway, right? Some people are going to feel like you sacrifice way more, but there are going to be people out there who don't think that you sacrifice enough. So instead of defining our parenthood by who gives up the most, we should be defining it by how much we personally get out of it. Parenthood is hard stuff, guys. It's something that you can't quite quantify, that everybody wants to believe they know something about, even if they haven't done it before. And it's something that a lot of people don't take seriously because it seems so easy and so cute on the outside. It's hard to show people the scarring that comes with having to give up personal time for weeks on end, or having a child puke in your mouth, which has apparently happened to a lot of my friends recently, and it kind of freaks me out. I hope this isn't a thing that I'm going to have to go through because I wouldn't handle it well. Anyway, my point being, parenthood is hard. It's a struggle. Taking care of someone else at your own expense in any situation is difficult. And instead of trying to quantify how difficult in comparison to one another, let's just all agree that it's hard as hell and that we should be proud that we do it every day. The NIAM Project podcast is produced, written, and edited by me, Ariana Bradford. You can find out more about us at weareniam.com or on social media under the NIAM Project. Thanks very much for tuning in with us this week, and I'll see you next time.